Well, you thought the first time was a roller coaster of fun and excitement. Well, guess what? It's time for round two. I am the one and only social misfit of radio, Jake Starr, and this is the Social Misfit Sit-Down. Thank God I didn't screw that up this time. I have to say that if I'm being honest here, it does seem like the first go-around was a little bit of a tepid response from other people, but this is a new thing. And maybe personally I set my expectations too high. In my mind, I was thinking, we could hit 100 views. We were in the tens. That's genius right there. But never fear, I'm a stubborn ass, and this is fun. So be prepared to continue to be blessed with whatever horse shit I continue to throw out there, and the tens of you who do listen will at least be treated to audio bliss. Well, I was hoping for an applause, but I guess I won't hear it if you do. So you know what? If you're not applauding, you missed your opportunity, because I'm just going to keep talking. We're going to get to the man of the hour. There's no housekeeping to do, so we're just going to get straight to the man himself. He's someone I'm extremely excited to get a chance to talk to in this type of setting, because we've been talking for a number of years already. And at the same time, he's going to bring that international flair to what this program could be. He's a legend. He's an icon. He's got championship reigns that span a number of characters, which is a testament to the genius that he is. He's the fastest ever Supreme Champion in SCW history with David Helms. And let's be real, he's everyone's BFF, including mine. In the Queen's English, he's called Tom, but we all know him as Wasley. What's up, brother?
All right, man. I just want to say before we get started that if you had high expectations last time, you should really lower them, because if I'm here, I'm lowering tone. So, don't expect too much. In fact, expect probably not even an eighth what you expected last time, because this is not going to go well for you if you think I'm going to be helping you raise the bar.
Well, if I get an eighth, I think that would actually be raising the bar. I think we're at 18. I think we're at 18, and about 4 of those were mine clicking on it by accident.
Yeah, I think 2 of them were probably me when I loaded it up when you'd first uploaded at work to see how long it was, and realised it were an hour and something long, and I was not going to use my mobile data to listen to that.
Well, that's an insult, my friend.
I only get 6 gig, and if I'm watching an hour-long video, that's going to take up at least half a gig.
I would say probably. I don't remember what the exact upload size was, but it was probably in that range.
I also know that I were coming to end my monthly allowance as well. So, as much as I love listening to you, do I want to be able to go on internet on my breaks at work, or do I want to listen to you talk to Greg? And I'm sorry, but internet at break one.
I can honestly say I don't blame you there. I'd rather be on the internet than listen to myself too.
Okay, that's showing some pride in your product, dude.
It's not pride, it's reality. And remember, that's what Jake Starr is known for.
I'm not even touching that one.
And if this is any indication how this is going to go, it's going to fall off the tracks really quickly, and it can make for a lot more fun. So let's
I think I should probably apologise in advance if people are wondering what the fuck I'm talking about, because obviously you said the Queen's English, and I probably speak the Queen's English maybe once a year. So but funny thing is, and I'm probably going to touch on this later, for anybody that ever read a Ryan Watson roleplay, this is what he sounded like.
Well,
so that might give you some indication of why the hell I had to write as weirdly as I did.
And the thing is, I'm going to need you to put subtitles with this for those of those out there who may not be able to comprehend it. But like he said, imagine you're just reading Watson and going, "Huh?" And that's what he's saying.
I don't think don't say that, because most people are going to turn off.
If they haven't already, we're at least
yeah, that's a fair point.
We're 4 minutes in and we've made it, so hey, that's a plus.
Woo-hoo.
Well, what I want to do is unlike with Greg, where I kind of had started on the more present and then worked my way to the past, with you, we're just going to start at the beginning with you, just because I want to see if it flows a little better. Plus, it lets me get to know you a little more, because you and I, we only crossed paths starting in 2009. And
that's true.
The beginnings of your efed life, the beginning of your your career in this game is something that's a bit of a mystery to me. Just not because I don't want to know, but I just don't think it's ever come up in our conversation. So, so I'd like to start with that. When did you actually start?
We are having to work it all out very quickly. It were either 98 or 99. I'd have been about 11 or 12, and it did not, it weren't anything like what it is now. Yeah, you were talking last time to Greg about how you don't know how we can write these like really long role plays all the time. I mean, if you'd have seen some of the stuff that I were writing when I first started, if it were like 200 words, I'd consider that a long role play. Oh
yeah, I remember those days where I look back at some of mine and I look at them and in my head there were these just lengthy role plays, and I'll do a word count on them, and it was like 600 words, and I go, I remember spending hours on that and just thinking that I was epic at that point. And now,
yep.
if
oh yeah, I know that feeling.
Yeah. So,
but about 98 or 99, I think it was. It were actually, I think it were a Yahoo chat room that I were in.
You got started in a Yahoo chat room too?
Well, I saw somebody talking. It were a wrestling chat room, and I think it were probably WCW rather than WWF as it were back then, because WCW were on free TV like over here, so I'd watch it at my nan's weekend. But WWF or WWE wasn't. It were on like subscription channels. So I were major into WCW, and I'd go on chat rooms to talk about that. And I can't tell you what Fed it were or who the guy were. It weren't somebody that ended up being like important in my experience in the game, but I saw someone posting about efed. Like, does anybody want to join one? And I'm like, what the fuck is an efed? So I obviously like looked it up, and at that time there were like, quite a few hits on Google or whatever it were I searched on back then, and that's kind of how I got going.
I shit you not that is exactly, almost to a T, exactly how I started. I was in a Yahoo chat room, in a wrestling chat room. Someone says, hey, you want to start or join an efed? And I'm like, what are you talking about? And I look at it, and it's a real wrestler fed, and next thing you know, I join, and I'm hooked.
I'd imagine that it's possibly something to do with the age that we are. In that there's probably quite a few people that are around our age, because I know me and you are quite close in age, and there's probably quite a few people that stumbled into this game in the same way, because we were all sort of into that internet generation where it would just kind of becoming mainstream to have internet. So like we all sort of stumbled across these things and stuff like that. I suspect that's possibly why. There's these similarities.
Yeah, and the thing is you really had two places to chat. You had AOL chat rooms and you had Yahoo chat rooms. So the people who didn't subscribe to AOL went on Yahoo, and the people who subscribed to AOL went to both. And so there were a bunch of people who were in both, who were all in that Yahoo chat versus the ones who were just in AOL.
See, I mean, I obviously I weren't AOL, because I'd have been in an AOL chat room probably, but I think chat rooms weren't particularly massive back then either, so it's like just the big companies that you knew had them, and like, oh, I'll go with them. Yeah,
exactly. So let's flash forward. I don't want to bore people with everybody having the same story of doing the real wrestler thing and to finally creating their own idea. What brought you to SCW, and when did you actually officially join?
See, that is a really easy question. Ash. Like, obviously most people are going to know Ash is the guy that handles like Tommy Valentine, Gable Winchester. The funny thing is, I'd been retired from Fedding for maybe 3 years, maybe 4, and one day Ash did one of these, it's on Facebook, one of these like 25 things you didn't know about me sort of quiz things, and one of them were that he were into efedding. Now this obviously like blows my mind, because nobody I know, like nobody I knew in person were into that, like when we were growing up. So I'm like, well shit, this is someone who's doing something that I used to love. So we started, I mean, I work with him, so we'd talk about it at work, and he convinced me to join the AWF, which was Jeremy's Fed, Brian Kinney. And then that went tits up. I think Jeremy closed it again. And I believe that we had the choice between SCW and I want to say Majestic, but it could have been IWC. But either way, I think it was Majestic because Adam were trying. Yeah, that were it, Majestic, because Adam were trying to convince Ash to go to Majestic with Tommy. It basically says, I'll put you straight into the main event picture if you come to Majestic. I'm not saying instant title shot, but you'll be there or thereabouts. And I just says, well, AWF is shut. I'm going away for a week anyway, so you pick where we're going, and I'll follow. So that explains how I think I decided to take like a month off. So Ash debuted in SCW as Tommy. Month later, roughly, I turned up, and the rest is history.
Yeah, it's still hard for me to call him Tommy. He will be. I'm one of those people when someone makes their first impression on me, it's hard for me to think of him as any other person. So he's always Thorn. And so, especially right now with the whole storyline between me and him, it's hard for me to not write Thorn. I'll start typing out to backspace, and it drives.
You see, there's something similar to that, but for me, because I came back into efedding, and we found a way of having the characters interact. So while I knew that his character on the screen was called Thorn, we were doing CD together. And obviously I used to write in script style, so I'd always put Tommy Valentine and then what he said. Because they're just, they were talking at home or wherever they were talking away from cameras. So it's like that clear sort of differentiation between Thorn, the character on screen, and the guy behind the paint. When he used to wear face paint. So for me, it were weird seeing Thomas Valentine mentioned on shows when he dropped Thorn, but actually using it, that's what I were used to anyway.
Yeah, and it's one of those things. I think that's where I was a little misinformed because I'll be honest, I didn't know his real name. It's awful to admit some of those things about myself as far as stupid moments, but it threw me off when all of a sudden I see Thomas Valentine booked, and I'm like, who the hell is that? And then I realized, oh wait. But you mentioned Brian Kinney, and I actually wanted to bring him up, which is kind of ironic because it's like you're reading my list of questions here.
Yeah, I hacked you about half an hour ago so that I knew what I were into.
Oh, good. Well, then I should just sit back and let you just keep rambling. But
yeah, it's not that Wasley show.
But okay, so when I first come, I'm kind of sitting there by myself. I'm this new guy, and I see this guy Thorn, and I'm like, that guy knows what he's doing. I kind of like how he writes. And I know he's got this buddy David Helms. I just hadn't seen Thorn because he was kind of more of that the more out there character at the time.
Yeah.
I approach him and say, hey, let's start doing some stuff together. And he says, well, we're aligned with Kenny at the moment, so we really can't. But then Kenny kind of vanished. And you have this new guy like me standing there saying, hey, you want to do something? What was it that made you guys actually say, hey, this new guy is all right to kind of join up with and do something with?
Again, I've got to throw it at Ash. I know that sounds like I'm like piling blame onto him if you want to say blame, but obviously like Jeremy or Kinney had been running AWF. So when I joined SCW a month after Ash joined, Kinney had already gone back. Might have even still been there. I don't know if he were role-playing while running AWF. But that relationship was sort of set in stone anyway from before we were in SCW. And then suddenly Jeremy did what Jeremy did fairly regularly and sort of just disappeared off the face of Earth for a while. And then Ash just, said that this guy is pretty cool. He wants to work some stuff together. So I just told him, it's like, well, you do whatever you want to do. I've got a storyline that's obviously I'm trying to get started in it anyway. Next thing you know, I've got like David Helms appearing in Jake Starr role plays, wearing all sorts of stupid costumes like a Smurf, I do believe.
It's sad that that's the one that you and I both remember. We still reference that one when we're just bullshitting more than any other roleplay I've written is the stupid one.
Well, can you blame me? I mean, this is like when I was using like Nicky Six as a pick base for Helms. So you've got like the image in my head of this guy with like this huge 80s spiked hair that, you know, looks like he's just stuck his finger in a plug socket while wet, painted blue to look like a Smurf. I mean, especially with him being like completely tattered up as well, like his entire body apart from his head more or less is covered in tattoos. So I imagine that you've got like all of his tattoos are still going to be partially visible under the paint. So you've then got like this Smurf with 80s hair that looks like, you know, a bit of a rough guy because he's got tattoos as well, which is just hilarious, the idea of a Smurf being covered in tattoos. It's just, how can you ever forget that image?
Well, it's one of those, I mean, I don't even know where a lot of those role plays. I don't know where my mind was at, just where those ideas came from. I think it was just because I didn't take myself seriously, but I knew what would be kind of funny in my head, and then it kind of leads to what I want to talk about next. But at that time, I mean, that was 2009, maybe early 2010.
Yeah.
And it was one of those things where Thorne was still the out there guy. You were still getting your feet under you. And I was apparently making everyone mad, maxing out. And so it was one of those, I look back and I'm like, how did I get away with portraying David Helms like that? And I have to remember that at that time, I mean, we all kind of had our little, I mean, I still think it was me, Greg, and Tommy fighting for the world championship after John left. And it wasn't David Helms yet in that picture, but
no, it was quite some time later.
Well, it was 2010, 2011 when all of a sudden you became David Helms became the guy. Everybody's eyes were on David Helms.
Yeah, SCW Superman, I believe a lot of people were calling him at that point.
You were John Cena of SCW.
Yeah, pretty much.
But what was it that helped you get that footing to where you were able to become, or take David Helms, I keep saying you, but bring David Helms to the level that he ultimately became?
See, it's one of them things that's definitely not down to the character. It was down to as a writer, and I'm not talking about like my ability or, you know, anything like that. I was holding myself back. I think I looked at what other people were doing. And I put, again, I'm coming back to Ash, but I think he only gets 50% of the blame for creating the monster that became David Helms, because I started talking to Pete around early 2010, and I'd look at what he were writing, and I'd look at what Ash were writing, and then I'd look at mine, and I realised that while the content, like the storyline, were there, I didn't have the detail. And I'm not just talking about as if I weren't writing 15,000 words, but these people were. I'm talking about my role plays with Helms used to be just dialogue. You'd get like 2 lines of description at the start of a scene, and then maybe like 3 pages of dialogue with tiny little bits of narration between, just saying that Helms lights up a cigarette, and then it'd be another line of dialogue. And then I realized that you've got these people that are the guys that are doing well, and the guys that are consistent are also the people that put in the detail in, put in emotion into it. And I'm like, well, I can do that. Why haven't I been doing that? So then I think you get towards, I think it would Rise to Greatness, 2010, when I think it was the scaffold match. which had Elms in, and there were Braden Walker, and other than that, I honestly don't remember who were in it. But that's when I tried to change up my style and throw some much more detail in, and then suddenly I'm like, I've won this scaffold match at Rise to Greatness, which gives me a shot either underground or adrenaline title, and that is where the character sort of started going through roof, because that were where the run started. I went after adrenaline title and beat Kai as Masquerade, I think, with the whole shtick of I want to make the adrenaline division matter. Because at that time, I think Kai had held the belt for a while, but there weren't really anybody that were going after it. And I've always loved sort of like cruiserweight wrestling and hardcore wrestling. They've been the two sort of subsets of wrestling that I loved most. So I'd sort of done the hardcore thing pretty much Helms' entire career. And so I decided, you know what, Helms is a small guy. He's like 5'10", 190-something pound. Why can't he just leap around ring like a spot monkey? So I thought, sod it. We'll make the adrenaline title matter. And I think it worked. Because you had people suddenly interested in like facing Helms, and whether that were because people thought I were a soft touch compared to Kai, or whether I actually managed to make the adrenaline division interesting, and I don't know. But I'd like to think that is what it were, that suddenly the adrenaline like title is getting revered by the guy that holds it as if it's the world title.
Yeah, and the funny thing is when I came in 2009, I have some match against, I mean, people, I don't even know if they showed, and it was, I mean, the nicest way. These are people who don't role play a lot and never tried to become anything better than what they were. I mean, that's just the nicest way. So they weren't anybody significant. And then my second match is at Retribution 2009. Oleg's given me this Ultimate Opportunity match, which at the time, I don't know what the hell that means. Because I don't think it really was defined what the Ultimate Opportunity was. And it was on a pre-show. And I'm some new guy, so I don't expect anything. Next thing I know, I'm reading the card, reading the results, and I'm in a title match against Alex Desiree Jr., however you say that name. So, Oleg, if I mispronounce that one, apologies. But
I think it's the Sue Brace, but you know, I used to think that Oleg's surname was pronounced way different than it actually is. So,
oh god, I thought I'd realized how it was spelled like just a few years back, and I'm like, oh, I've been saying that wrong. But, and so next thing I know, I'm facing Alex Jr. and I get a title in my third match, and everybody, from what I understand, is up in arms about that, of who's this new guy getting it. And I had talked to Oleg about why he did that, and he said the adrenaline title meant nothing. So I wanted to see if maybe you could run with it for a little while. And I was cool with it. But it's amazing how many people I've talked to say they want that adrenaline title to make it matter again. Because it's kind of interesting. It goes through waves where it's someone has it that everybody wants to beat. And then it goes through a lull where to be quite honest, I'd have to go look and see who's champion right now, because it's kind of fallen into that rut, in my opinion.
You see, I don't necessarily agree with that.
Oh, wait. Sorry, Pete. I remember now. Sorry, Pete. Brain fart.
Yeah, there we go. I think that Oleg kind of got rid of that notion of that title not really mattering when he started Shot of Adrenaline. And it might just be because I've just been in most recent one, but that title getting its own tournament every year for the last, 3 years?
Yeah,
has pushed that belt into forefront. It's made people take note. And with the amount of people that you have in that tournament competing in that number of matches for round robin at the beginning, it's like every single show for a couple of months has got these big matches. But back then there weren't any of that. You're like 09, 2010. It just like Adrenaline title were just one of other titles that weren't the world title. And at one point in SCW, I would say the only title that seemed to matter to most people was the world title.
Yeah.
And I don't think you've got that anymore. I think that's one of the good things about SCW is that the titles have all got people who want to go after them because of what that title is, not just because it's another bit of gold to add to the resume.
Yeah, and I think what I'm trying to say is to be honest, I feel bad about forgetting Shot of Adrenaline, but what I'm saying is at least I guess maybe I don't talk to a lot of people, but it doesn't feel like there's that, oh, I want to be the guy who beats so-and-so, which I heard constantly in 2009. Everybody wanted to be the one who beat me for it. And when you had it, it was the same thing. Mm-hmm. Everybody wanted, and right now I want to see it get back to there. I want to see it where it's, I mean, yeah, that tournament definitely helps get it the spotlight it deserves. But I kind of want to see someone hold on to it to the point where it starts to make people mad. Because that's, I'll always have a soft spot for that belt. I want to see, like, hell, if Pete held on to it for another 4 or 5 months, people would start getting annoyed. And
how long has he had it? Because he's had it since last year.
Yeah, I don't
know.
He
has had it a hell of a long time. I know he lost it because he lost to JJ as Casey. But then when they had a rematch, I think that's how Pete won it back. But I'm sure that would have been like last summer, I want to say.
Has it been that long?
So I'm sure we're getting to the point where he's nearly had it for a year.
Well, I've been out of every title picture for so long, I hardly know who's had what win.
There's days where I don't even remember what my own name is when I get out of bed. So,
God, that is today for me, man. That's all I can say is bluff. Oh man! So when you first took that step where you got the Adrenaline title, you kind of became the guy people started having to take notice of. What did it feel like to be the guy who's being hunted instead of having to, say, chase other people down?
I don't think I actually saw myself as that guy for quite a while. Because, there were people that were going for Adrenaline title, and it were great to have that feeling that the Adrenaline title were prestigious again. But, I mean, I don't think I realised that people had sort of seen that Helms had taken this step up until you get to end of year show and the vote. Like in 2010, when I got the world title shot to face you, that's the point where I realised that, holy shit, this character that I've started off as a bit of a pastime when I was like 11 or 12 has turned into someone who's like main eventing a company like SCW that is so competitive. And I know it's competitive now. It's probably more competitive now than it were back then. But compared to every other Fed I'd ever been in, SCW, I mean, you could never say like 100% this person's going to beat this person. There were always people that could like scare you. Where 1 week there'd be crap. Like they'd post something that they clearly wrote in about 10 minutes, and then next week they'd post a role play that were like, holy shit, where'd that come from? Yeah. So then, like, to find myself that was sort of like chucked into the main event with that vote, I'm like, that were when I kind of realised that Helms actually seemed to be important, because I was just happy with Adrenaline title, like trying to defend that as much as I could, and then to be thrust into world title picture when I'd like not even mentioned world title. That were kind of eye-opening to where the character had gone.
Yeah, and I remember that vote because I won't lie, I voted for you too. Because it was one of those, at the time, my vote was probably based more on you being my friend than anything else. Just because I think that's one thing that has evolved over the years is those votes people have actually taken it less as a popular vote to more of actually. Who deserves this over this over this? It's turned into more of a. I don't disagree with a lot of the votes. I don't think I've disagreed with any of the votes lately, just because it really has boiled down to everyone actually taking a step back, taking their personal views, setting them to the side, and answering who deserves this, who deserves that, on a much more fair basis.
Yeah, I think there is something to that. I mean, I still think there is like a certain part of people that vote based on popularity, because if it were up to me, even though I'm not going to lie, I voted for myself in last one, just because I liked the idea of like finishing a rookie year with a world title shot. But I do think that I didn't deserve to get that shot. I think Hayden was the only one on that list this year that deserved it, and that's why I was sort of glad to see that he'd got it as well.
Yeah. Well,
so I think there is sort of an element of people have realised that you should vote on who deserves it, which they clearly did because Hayden won it.
Yeah.
But I think there were also that element of people that were voting for me because, well, you said I'm everyone's BFF, which I don't agree with, but, you know.
Nobody has ever said a bad thing about you to anybody. Let's be real. Everyone loves you.
I bet I can name plenty of people who don't, but I'm not going to name any names.
Well, let's kind of stay on a similar topic and talk about favoritism. It's a topic that is touchy for some people, but you and I have had that conversation. We've had it on a very even keel where it's not this wild, drawn out slam of somebody or even each other.
Yeah.
You were once one of those people who people thought was a favorite as no matter what. They just thought, oh, it's Wasley. He's going to get the rub no matter what. Mm-hmm. And the thing is no matter who you are, no matter where you are on the pecking order as it is, you feel that somebody else is always the favorite over you at some point.
Well, I mean, there's two ways of sort of looking at that. I mean, you can look at it as favoritism in that Oleg sort of gives these people opportunities all the time. Or you can just look at it as sort of like being one of the favorites as in odds. So like, it's so-and-so. He's going to win because he's so-and-so. Or she's so-and-so. She's going to win. She's good. And, I mean, when I'm writing, I never go into a match. Well, I don't want to say never, because there's obviously some times where you see what you've written at end of it and you think, you know what, I think I'm going to win. But I'd say 99% of my matches I go in expecting to lose. And that's simply because the game part of efedding is less important to me than telling a story. It always has been. And it's like, I see so many people that get bent out of shape when they lose a big match. And I think people get fed up in me saying it's a game because some people take it more seriously than it just being a game. But for me, it's about creating a storyline for a character. And maybe that's because of my background in writing, or maybe it's just because I don't take it as seriously as some people do. But I expect to lose anyway.
Well, how did it make you feel knowing that people just looked at you and said, oh, he's just going to win because that's just who he is?
See, the funny thing is, the last time, and I'm not mentioning no names, but the last time I heard that I'd been put on a list of Oleg's favourites was a time where I'd not had a world title shot in maybe 3 years. It was before Helms retired, because Helms was still active. And in fact, it was just before I won Best at Best. So obviously I did then get a world title shot. But from that point, I'd gone from, I think, 2012, when I think Helms faced Christie, I want to say, up until winning Best at Best without getting an outright world title shot. Or without not having to try and compete, like, saying, taking Old at Flame or out like that. And to have my name thrown on that list when, to Oleg's own admission, there were a period of time where he had no direction for Helms at all and had just given him like really weak storylines for each pay-per-view. I mean, he actually had to apologise to me, saying, I've given you like 4 or 5 months worth of 1 month storylines. So like, short feud, you face that person, it's over. On to next short feud, face that person. And then to find out that somebody were bitching to Oleg about favourites and how I'm on that list. And I just laughed so much when Oleg told me. I mean, like, literally, my other half sat on the sofa across from me looking at me, like, wondering what the fuck I am laughing at, because I am literally laughing out loud when I read what Oleg had said. And I'm like, oh, Jesus. It's a game. It's a game.
Well, you know, at first I thought you were actually talking about me, but then you mentioned it to Oleg, and I'm like, no, once I said that to you and you said the exact same thing, you're like, dude, I haven't had a title shot in how many years? And so first I thought you were talking about me. I'm like, it's my show.
No,
you can tell.
if it were you, I'd have said it. I'd have took great joy in taking piss out of you with all these people listening, all these 10 people listening to me do it.
Yeah, you wouldn't be the first one to take me to school on that one. Well, okay, so you say that Oleg had this point where you had these little one-off feuds here and there, and I think there comes a point where everybody kind of gets that phase where, I mean...
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Oleg's got 60 characters plus to try and figure out storylines for, so occasionally, I mean, I've ended up in that before, and I look back and at the time I'm annoyed and throwing a fit, and Oleg has to talk me off of a ledge, and I've tried to get better with that as far as realizing that it's not all about me. As much as I like to think it is, it's not. And I think that's like the first step in the 12-step process is admitting it's not all about me. But you did something that I knew was coming only because you and Ash wanted to be very honest with me about it. But it took a lot of people by surprise. You took David Helm's heel.
I know.
It was something that the 2 days. I think it was the week before it actually it happened. You guys came and told me, and I was heartbroken. I won't lie, my heart sank because I'm like, my friends are leaving me, and I was so blindsided. But I appreciated the fact you guys were at least honest, saying, "Hey, guess what? This is going to happen." Mm-hmm. What was it that made you decide to really change things up and go in that direction?
Literally, I think it was just that I'd never done it. Obviously, I'd run heel characters before, but Helms had never been a heel. You know, he like you said, he was the Cena of like efeding. That's what he was. He was the guy who was filled with righteous fury. He protected the rights of the fans and this, that, and other. I had never done heel. And you get to a point when you've been running a character for so long, and you're thinking, like, what the fuck can I do to actually make this character interesting again? And me and Ash, I mean, at that point, we were like roommates. We shared a house. And we were sat up one night, and we were saying, oh, wouldn't it be good if, like, Tommy and Dave went heel? And then we kind of looked at each other, and there was just that moment where we were both thinking the exact same thing. It's like, would it be brilliant? What the fuck would it be like? And then we start, obviously, that conversation just started rolling, and we started talking ideas, and one thing led to another. And obviously, at the time, I had the storyline going on where Helms and Siren were like an item, but nobody knew. And we're like, well, could we link it to that? Could we have like Helms and Tommy join Siren and Raven? And we pitched it to Oleg, and I think it was like almost as if we could hear the cogs turning in his head, because we've said that, you know, we're interested in going heel. So you've got like two of the babyest baby faces in SCW thinking about going heel, and you straight away it were like ideas. And like, oh, it's like, right, we'll do it, but I am not telling you what's happening or when it's happening. You will just have to react. And then you kind of got hints that it were coming soon. And then I think we'd kind of told you it were happening. But at the time when we told you, we still didn't know when. We knew it were coming, but because Oleg had said, look, I'll do it, but I'm doing it my way, and I'm going to do it when I think it's time to do it. So we just said, yeah, go for it, you know, just as, you know, we'll roll with it. And then we told you, and then like next thing you know, on the next show, boom, next level have just gone heel. They've just like united with Dark Fantasy in the middle of a match, not just in the middle of a ring. Dark Fantasy versus Next Level going off, and suddenly Helms and Siren are kissing each other in the middle of a ring. None of the fans knew they were dating, and then they pin each other. And the match ends in a draw, and then they started saying that Dark Fantasy and Next Level were like co-tag team champions. And I like I had to tip my hat to Oleg, because that were just fucking genius in my book. It really were. Well, I would have never have guessed that that's how he'd do it.
Well, and the way that show ended was with the four of y'all in the ring and me and Greg looking, and in my head, I know exactly what he's saying, and I'm just heartbroken. Even though I knew it was coming, it was written so well, and I'm just like, oh. But
can you imagine that if we were fans watching like WWE doing that storyline, we'd have been like screaming at the TV. So that moment that you can just picture like millions of fans across the world watching that unfold on an episode of Raw, like a similar storyline. It was like, holy shit, an end of an era.
Yeah, and it was one that it led to, I won't lie, it led to me being really lost, because ever since I had been in SCW, minus the first just couple months, I had you guys by my side. And so I had gotten really used to writing David Helms, Thorne, and then there at the end, Greg working him in, and then I had nothing. But it was something that I got after processing it. I understood why you did it, but boy, did I sit there and go, I don't know what to do now.
And I do remember you saying that to me, and I felt really guilty. But then I had to explain to you that we'd talked, like when we were having the like discussions on what it'd be like if we took a meal, like on the idea of Jake joining him, and just the idea of Jake and Siren and Raven in a stable, it were like chalk and cheese in like worst way imaginable. That would just not have worked. Well, and
it was like
we ended up with a similar situation and anyway by trying to have like Reagan and Siren in a stable together, and that was just like equally as bad an idea in grand scheme of things. But at time we thought we could make that work because Reagan were new enough, whereas Jake had been like a thorn in Dark Fantasy's side for like years at this point. It was like from Brotherhood and Infamous as a feud.
Yeah.
Gone on for so long, and Jake had said so many things and done so many things on shows that was never going to work, ever.
Yeah, there would have been no sense. It was like reading the end of Tactical Warfare at the most recent Retribution, where it's just casually mentioned in there, Jake and Raven are in the back talking to one another. I'm sitting there going, we are? I'm like sitting there in my head going, I wonder what that conversation is, because those two have never really spoken to one another.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of those that for some reason I can't get that sight out of my head, just because the weirdness that was the ending of Tactical Warfare, but just that part was just like, that was such a throwaway thing, but to me was just, I'm sitting there going, would they ever really talk, or what would they say? Would they be talking about dinner later? Or
see, I mean, at this point, both of them both characters have grown so much compared to that feud that if we were doing it all over again, it'd have worked. But obviously, back then, there was no way in hell that you'd have been able to put Jake Starr in a room. In fact, you're lucky that they can be. Back then, you were lucky they could be in the same building or even the same city. It causing chaos. Whereas now, it'd work. But back then, there was just no way in hell that were going to work.
No, and it was one of those. That storyline is another one of those that stuck out as almost a new era of SCW, because it was, you had, if I remember right, Omar was still relatively new.
Yeah, I think they had like Reagan and one other person around at that point.
And so that was kind of that turning point where it took that evolution.
Mm-hmm.
But you were heel for a while, and then came the farewell tour.
Yeah, the longest tour ever.
Yeah, because all of a sudden I see in your signature this countdown appear. 400 days until retirement. I'm like, the hell is he doing? Like, who decides they're going to have, I mean, I don't know how much you follow Major League Baseball over here in the States, but We had Derek Jeter retiring, and every time he'd play his last game in a town, they'd do this whole pomp and circumstance where they'd give him a gift. And I'm sitting here going, man, imagine 400 days of that.
Yeah. I basically had it in my head that I wanted him to get to his 35th birthday, and that was like the date. Originally, I weren't planning on making like a big deal out of this farewell tour, so to speak, the retirement tour. But then like other people would pick up on it, and because I'd mentioned retirement quite a lot, and suddenly people are calling it the retirement tour, and I'm like, why the fuck am I not listening to that? Sod it. This character's been with me for like, I think at that point at least 15 years, because I think it was 17 years to like pretty much to the day when he retired. And I'm like, why not? You know, it's not real wrestling. We have to suspend so much belief to play this game that why can't I do something daft as having like a near 2-year retirement tour, even if it was sort of like tongue in cheek. Like I never took it deadly seriously, in that this is my retirement tour and I'm going to do all these shows and all these things. It was a number, and it became a way of like starting off my role plays where I'd have a location, a date, and then days to retirement. It just became a way of formatting my role plays for a while. But I thought, why not? He's a character that's like been in main event in SCW for like several years at this point. He's been like a 15-year veteran. He's been world champion in like 2 or 3 feds. Why can't I do this?
Yeah, and it's one of those where it also threw me off in the sense that in my mind, David Helms retiring just was a hard thing for me to get my head around, because even though you handle multiple characters, you're always going to be David Helms. That's just who you are. Yep. It's like if I brought some new person in, would I ever not be Jake Starr? I doubt it.
No. Trust me, you know, there's not a show goes by where I wish that Helms was still around, even though I've sort of like done my best to replace him in SCW and replaced him with a character that is pretty much Helms 2.0, but from starting again. There's still that point where I'm thinking, you know, I could have carried on with Helms for like so many years and not like lost the plot with the character, like not lost where I was taking him. But at the same time, it just got to that point of thinking, how much have I put this guy through in storylines? How much more can I do to him before it's like, oh yeah, this, you know, I've done this before. I can deal with this. It's fine. It was like creatively, I'm like, I want to go out on my terms as a character. Well, as a character, I want him to go out on his terms.
Now, be honest. Have you considered bringing him back for one-offs or any kind of?
Well, he's already kind of has. I competed in because obviously Helms is like now the in-character general manager of UWA, the main competition, so to speak. And there were a tournament in memory of Orlando Cruz. And storyline, well, Chris asked me if I wanted to enter as Helms. And I'm like, I'm done. I retired him. I don't really want to. And then I thought about it. I'm thinking, well, hold on. In character, Orlando's death were huge. And this is a tournament in the company that Helms is like 20% owner of, general manager for. They're organising a tournament in memory of Orlando. Helms probably would compete in it if he were a real person. So I kind of brought him back for that and made it to, I think, quarter-final, semi-final, I don't remember which. In fact, I think Helms gave Alana Starr, which is one of Omar's characters, her first ever singles loss in that tournament. So that, you know, that were kind of enough for a rub for me to think, you know, I've still got it as Helms. if I had to bring him back, because I just decided every other character I've got were just useless. But other than that, no, I couldn't do it. I even put it. The character said that the end is the end. There's no. I think my last match, the promo for it, like Helms said, this is it. There's not going to be a reunion tour, or there's no like grand return in a year's time where I come out of retirement. That is it, and I'm sticking to my word.
Yeah, and the one thing that this is a topic I've wanted to talk to you about for a while because we kind of had a conversation about it. I want to say a few months after Helms actually retired, and you seemed legitimately annoyed. And so what I want to talk about is Jake Starr constantly bringing up David Helms. Because you were like, dude, he hasn't even been there in 6 months and you're still talking about it. That just seems like you're being a dick.
But at the same time, you were like, it weren't you being a dick. It was Starr being a dick. And that's what you expect from Jake Starr. Even as a face, you expect Jake Starr to be a dick. So I suppose in a way, you were doing your job.
Well, the way I had approached that is I looked at it like kind of like Paul Heyman always bringing up Brock Lesnar beating The Undertaker, even though they've basically tried to pretend that it wasn't as big of a deal.
Yeah.
But it was always brought up. Even if you hadn't seen The Undertaker in 8 months and it's not anywhere near WrestleMania time, they would still bring it up. And so it was one of those things I knew from my standpoint was I'll be frank, I didn't know how to be a heel. I had never been a heel character ever. I had always been the tweenery face asshole. That's just because I really like being liked, but I like being an asshole. So I was like, what would be something that would just rub people wrong? And so my thought was always, bring up the one time out of the tens of times we faced, the one time I beat David Helms, and act like it ended the entire retirement. But when we talked about it, I don't know why it's the nature of text not being able to convey emotion very well. So I was curious what your actual thoughts were, and I mean you already told me, but that's why I brought that up.
Yeah, I mean, when we did speak about that, it weren't as if it pissed me off, because it didn't. I got why you were doing it. I really did. It was just like, how much longer can you spin that out? And it were almost like intriguing to see how much longer you could spin that out, because it obviously weren't going to stop doing it anytime soon. So then I started like just seeing how many times you threw his name out in a promo each week, just to see if he was still doing it.
If there's
if it sounded like I was pissed off, then I apologize. It made me laugh. It really did.
No, if there's a horse, man, I will beat it until it is dead. But no, it was one of those things. And then it became just, at that point, I kind of fell into your boat. How many different ways can I work this in without feeling like I'm shoehorning it in just to say something? I'm like, how many different ways can I actually work it into the context of whatever I'm saying? So it became a game for me. And thankfully, it's like, now I get to figure out how to eventually work in the inevitable meeting between Jake and David and what weirdness that will bring.
I mean, that's going to be huge, because when you think about Jake and Dave have not spoken, like properly spoken, since Dave went heel. And then...
Well, we sort of had that moment when David Helms approached Jake's wife to talk to him, and then it lasted for about 2 or 3 role plays, and then it went away. It wasn't. That's why it's one of those things where, I mean, Oleg jokingly calls it the Jake Starr apology tour, which I really actually like the name of, because I think it's funny to think of Jake Starr apologizing. But to be honest, I don't know when I want to do that, because whenever it's gonna happen, it needs to happen in a context that makes sense. If you just all of a sudden magically have it happen, it wouldn't work that way.
Yeah.
And so that's where it's kind of an interesting situation where Jake Starr, I keep saying because I have to separate myself, the radio guy, versus the in-character guy. It's like Greg trying to separate himself from Greg Cherry. It's kind of a weird thing to do, but it'll be an interesting thing whenever I can figure out and work with you on how to make it something that is true to you, but also would be true to the situation.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you've got that sort of the amusing irony, if you want to look at it that way, that Starr ended up doing what Helms had done.
Yeah, right?
About a year later, and it were a massive deal when Dave did it, but then because it were Jake that were doing it, it's like, and what's your problem?
Yeah.
So you've gone from like Starr berating Helms so badly for turning his back on him and turning his back on Greg and the fans, and then Jake does the exact same thing, and it's like, okay,
I'm just a little late to the party sometimes.
It's like, are you just stupid or are you the world's biggest hypocrite?
Yes.
It was like yes to both.
So, yeah, pretty much. Trust me, I'll get mad at something, and then the minute somebody else gets mad about the same thing, I'm like, "What the hell are you mad about?" It just, I can't keep an argument going in the right direction for very often. But that you're unlike Greg, you're still active. You're still someone who enjoys the game, enjoys writing, and has fun with it. It hasn't driven you off into retirement world out of character. But at this point, what is that one moment you can say is your proudest in your career?
I think it probably wasn't winning the world title in SCW, but getting that vote, because that was sort of the moment where it got the stamp of approval that Helms had sort of reached that point. Like up until that point, obviously I'd won Adrenaline title sometime after Rise to Greatness, and I'd also had an Underground title reign, either early on in 2010 or I think it was possibly actually back end of 2009. But other than that, I'd been mid card. And whether that were lower mid card, upper mid card, that's where I were. That were his place in SCW. And then obviously I took a month off where we had him injured in the match with Lucas Knight and I want to say Fred Debonair. I think it were an Underground rules match. I think Helms ended up being like DDT'd onto a flaming cricket bat or something like that. And I used that to take a month off. And that's when I came back for like Rise to Greatness, and for the work that I'd been putting in from Rise to Greatness onwards, and the way that I'd sort of changed my approach to how I was writing my role plays to get that vote. Just it was like accepting the character as a main player in SCW, and even though he was sort of like he sort of stayed there or thereabouts right up until sort of his retirement, his actual retirement, not just the tour. That moment was like the confirmation, the pat on the back for making the character into what I had.
Yeah, and that makes sense. I mean, I think it'd be cliche to say, oh, one title and one organization was a pinnacle because, I mean, let's be real. If someone doesn't show or anything, you can win a title and you may not have, I don't want to say you may not have earned it, but you may have gotten it almost by default.
Yeah.
So I understand thinking about it from that context where you're thinking about it from a personal standpoint, knowing that you bent over backwards to really make David Helms into something that the rest of us looked at and went, that's something special.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. At least that's how like it felt at the time anyway. And whether or not, like you say, it was just because at that point I'd been in Fed for like a year and change, and like people actually started to like me as a person, like talking to me away from boards like on Messenger and stuff, and they're just like, this guy's actually pretty cool. We'll just vote for him. But I'd like to think that it is some sort of like affirmation for that work that I put in.
Well, I would say that while you are everyone's BFF, that's going to be my new thing. You have more respect going for you than a lot of people probably ever will, and that's not a knock on anybody else. It's just you've stepped up both from an in character and out of character, and just a all around point of view to show that you want to be respected, you want to be liked, but you aren't gonna try and sugarcoat it. You're just gonna be who you are. And
is there any other way to be? I know it's difficult that you sat behind a computer screen talking to people. And I think if everybody just talked on Skype, like massive group conversations, people wouldn't have to have a computer persona. But why should people pretend to be anything other than who they are? I mean, there's a couple of people, again, not mentioning names, but there's a couple of people that I've promised that I will be blunt and completely myself with criticism if I ever have it. I will not sugarcoat my words, because what do people gain from sugarcoating? If somebody comes to you for advice, you don't tell them that everything's perfect. If they're in like middle of a rut where they've been losing matches and they want some advice from you and say, "Oh, don't change out, don't worry, you'll be fine," that's not going to help them. So if you say, "Look, this is from my point of view, I'm not the judge, but," and tell them where you think they should make changes, or if somebody's acting a certain way and you think it's dumb or whatever, just tell them. You don't have to be a dick. Being honest don't make you a dick. It just makes you honest. And if people don't want to listen to that honesty, then fair enough. But if they don't want honesty, don't ask questions.
Yeah, I agree. And it's one of those things you've been. There was one point where I asked you for some feedback, and you were brutal with it. I didn't take it personally because I said, please be brutal with it. Mm-hmm. And it's to the point where I try to make sure that if I ask someone for an opinion, I'm blunt and I say, be honest about it. Don't try to sugarcoat it for me.
You're not going to grow if you let people blow smoke up your ass. That's what it is at the end of the day.
Yeah. Now that we've kind of covered your career, let's talk about the game a little.
Okay.
What do you think? Because, I mean, we both started way back when it was you pick a real wrestler, you write 20 lines of a promo, you end with their own catchphrase, and that was a role play. And now we're to the point where it's this big character development and promo world. What's next? What do you see as maybe the next trend or the next evolution of this game?
I honestly ain't got a clue. I mean, I know that's a bit of a cop-out, but I already said that I were behind the trend in SCW anyway. I looked at what Pete and Ash were doing with their role plays and realised that that's what I need to be doing. So I'm always in this sort of state of catch-up. So when something becomes the norm, I then realise it maybe like a few months after.
Yeah, and I once wondered maybe it was like people doing something like this where they record their promo. And
see, these people have done that.
But my thought is you have guys playing as female characters, and it wouldn't work there. So I've tried to, when I thought of that question, because that's one of mine, I'll freely admit that, I sat there and I was like, well, what do I think it is? And I'm kind of with you where I don't know.
Mm-hmm. So that's the thing. I mean, this game's growing all the time. So you don't. I mean, you think about it's not just the way that role plays have got longer and that character development's more prominent. I mean, how many people post on layouts these days? That wasn't a thing for years, and then suddenly, like probably more than half of a roster will post a role play from an external link, so that they can, like, for me, it's just because it looks pretty.
I think it's because we're all lazy and don't want to scroll through 15,000 words.
Yeah, maybe. There is something to that. But I mean, at the same time, it's like colours and stuff like that. Yeah. If you post on boards, I could not be asked to change, like put all coding in on boards.
Oh God, BB code is awful.
Yeah, I hate it. Whereas you stick it in Dreamweaver and highlight the text and hit bold, and you're done.
Well, you've seen how my weird way of doing it, but I figured out a way to shorthand it, and then I can copy and do a mass change of my HTML.
Yeah.
Now,
which is probably the quicker way of doing it, but
well, it's one of those things. Like, I'm probably doing it in a weird way. I mean, hell, there's probably someone else out there that has a better way that I'd be like, man, I should do it that way. But it's one of those, someone finds out what works for them, run with it.
Yeah. But that's exactly how we'll find out what the next big thing's going to be.
Yeah.
Because I think you and Greg talked about it last time. He was saying how Adam changed the game in SCW. It just needs another Adam. One person comes in and does. I mean, Omar is the perfect example because he has with the way he sets out his CD, he's got a prologue and an epilogue, and the main CD section. And until that point, I'd maybe seen one person messing about with prologues or epilogues, and then suddenly there's people that are putting quotes into their RPs from other people. Like other characters doing a small promo, more or less, talking about that character to go in that roleplay. There's people that are doing prologues and epilogues in nearly every roleplay because that trend has come in through Omar. At least that's how I see it. So all you need is like an Adam, an Omar, somebody to come in and do something that's so different that people are going to catch on. And then they're going to want to do it.
I'm kind of bummed you didn't talk about the guy who brought maxing out back into the cool kids club.
Yeah, but, we don't talk about that.
I have to be a self-absorbed ass every now and then.
No, you're the guy that caused me to be up quite regularly until like 4 or 5 in the morning working on stuff.
Oh, God, yes.
The amount of sleep that I would lose back then.
So
pissing my girlfriend off because I'm not coming to bed till 5 o'clock and she's gone to bed at 11 p.m.
We've all been there.
Uh-huh.
So as far as this game goes, what do you think is next for you? What next for you? Do you continue to create new characters? Do you just work on the ones that you have?
I can't see me creating any new characters, at least not in a roleplay fed. Obviously, AJ was in the pipeline from the minute I decided that Helms was nearly at an end. So I think AJ had started appearing in role plays 15, 16 months before Helms retired, with the view to him becoming the next Helms. And at minute, the characters that I have got that are active in roleplay feds, I mean, there's obviously some that I love more than others, but I could carry them on. It literally depends. When a character's done, you know that it's done. That's what it is. So I'll just keep going until I realise that I'm either not enjoying writing a character anymore, or the story's not there, it's not clicking, and I'm stubborn. So it takes a lot for me to admit. There's characters that probably should have disappeared months before they did, and I just wouldn't admit it because I was convinced I could turn it around. Oh
yeah, that's when you know that the game still has you hooked. When you're like, no, I know I can do this still.
Yep.
So now we're gonna get to. I know I put the thread up on the SCW board, so I know you saw some of the questions. We're gonna get to some of those because I know those were some real serious ones.
Sounds like a plan.
So this was one I don't remember who wrote it, but what kind of name is Wasley?
My surname. That's probably the simplest question I'm going to get.
When I saw that one, I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to shoehorn that question in, but by God, it's getting asked.
I think that it was Wes that asked that one, and he's called Wesley, so that's why it were a relevant question.
And this is one, I guess you say this is kind of the final question on what I have, but a lot of people who know you outside of the efed world know you as a guy who used to upload vlogs on a very regular basis.
Uh-huh.
They were part of my morning ritual for, I don't know, the year that you did it, year and a half?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I started realizing I wasn't getting, it was like my morning cup of coffee, but it was my morning dose of Wasley going, morning. Why did you stop doing them?
I never really intended to start doing them. That's as daft as that sounds. I mean, me and my other half don't really watch TV. We've obviously got a TV, but we only get like the basic free channels because I cancelled as like cable subscription like a year ago because we weren't watching it. We watch YouTube through like PS4, and like a lot of YouTubers that we watch are gamers, but we also watched like a few vloggers, and I decided to do a vlog, and then did another one, and then it got to a point where I think I was doing like maybe 1 or 2 a week, and then I just thought I'll try daily vlogging. And so I did. And then I realised that, my life were pretty boring and I was doing the same thing every day and people shouldn't be forced to watch me do the same thing every day. So I thought, right, I'll get to end of a year. So I'll do 365 videos consecutively and I'll call that an achievement.
Well, I guess you could say achievement unlocked then.
Yeah. Well, it'd only be like a 10 credit achievement.
Have you ever thought about doing them just periodically?
I think I'm too lazy. I really do. At one point, we were going to carry on doing random videos every now and then, like the boyfriend does my makeup and stuff like that. But truth is I'm far too lazy and there's stuff that we should be doing already that we're not. So the idea of doing YouTube videos is just a bit too much.
Well, and it takes a lot of creativity. I mean, even in preparing to talk to you, I mean, granted, I didn't really know how to get back to pre-2009 Wasley land, and as far as efeding goes, I mean, it takes some work to really be able to look into it and figure out what you're gonna talk about. So that creativity aspect, I can understand. You may call it laziness, but I mean that creativity level's hard. I mean those YouTubers that are able to do the stuff that they do, like the big ones like KSI and all of those sidemen channels. I mean to think of how much of their life they devoted to this to now basically do it full time as a job.
Yeah,
it's not easy.
But I think there were also an element of luck to when, not luck as in they got big, but getting into YouTube at the right time. Because you look at, PewDiePie is like the number one YouTuber, in terms of numbers, most subscribers, most views, etc., etc. He were in YouTube from the ground up. He were one of the earlier subscribers. So back then, YouTube was new, and people were flooding in to see these videos that were getting uploaded because suddenly you can watch all these videos for free on YouTube. And for content creators back then, it were easy to build an audience. So they're sort of now reaping the rewards of the work that they put in back then. Whereas now, any fat bastard like me with a camera can become a vlogger. It don't mean that people are going to start watching you just because you're doing it. Whereas back then, people would watch because it were a brand new thing.
Yeah, I can completely understand that. And I think on that note, it is time to end, to quote Jeremy Clarkson. I would like to thank my dear friend Wasley for joining me. I know he was real hyped to be able to be a part of this. From the minute that we announced Greg's, he was already saying, "Hey, if you're going to do more than one, I want to be in on it."
Well, it's the only time I get to do it because when Oleg used to do the Supreme Radio shows, they were all in character, and there is no way in hell you are going to get someone from South Yorkshire in England to sound like someone from New Jersey. That is just not going to work. So Helms could never be on any of them. Whereas at least if you're doing something like this as an OOC perspective, it's I'll talk about shit for an hour. I'll be happy to talk about stuff for an hour.
If I had any character outside of the Midwest, I would have a problem with that. Or I could pull my Texan accent back out, and then I might be able to swing that one. But if we're not out of the Midwest, then all bets are off for me. But I would like to.
I think that's why I ended up like making a character that we're from where I'm from with Watson, so that if I ever did get invited onto one of these things, at least I could just be me.
Yeah, it's one of those that I'd like to be on as Jake Starr, the character, because then I can just be a horse's ass the entire time. But I would like to thank you, my friend. Follow him on Twitter. I didn't do that for Greg last week. I feel bad. Follow Greg on Twitter at PA Sensation. Follow Mr. Wasley on Twitter at @thatwasley. That's spelled THAT Wasley. I'm just going to confuse everyone by spelling the wrong part of your Twitter handle. Follow me at the Jake Starr. Follow the channel at the Cynical View, because Cynical View Media was taken, so I had to go with what I could. And yeah, I'm gonna start working on the next one. Hopefully, I can get Ash to agree to put his security garden away long enough to come join me. I think he'd be a fun talk as well.
Especially in a follow-up to me.
Yeah, and then if you guys all decide it's going to be a giant panel discussion on interviewing me, that's going to be terrifying.
Yeah, you should be afraid.
Oh, God. The three of y'all all coming at me at once. Oof. Well, I thank you, my brother. And to you 10 people or 18, however many it is that listen, thank you. And yeah, we'll see you next time.